conflict isn't bad, right? Tension isn't bad. It's
Amen.
when, yes, it's when you don't resolve it. That's when it becomes an issue, a workplace issue, a personal issue, things like that. But out of conflict, out of tension, oftentimes comes innovation.
Welcome to the Leading Through Crisis podcast, brought to you by Revisionary, exploring resilient leadership in a world of constant change. Every few weeks, Celine Williams, speaker, strategist, and trusted advisor to leaders navigating change, brings conversations that explore how to deal with the inevitable and perpetual shifts of leadership. These discussions reveal practical insights, thoughtful strategies, and stories of resilience to help you lead with clarity and calm.
My guests today are John Grannis and Bob Chonka, executive members of Sollah Interactive, an award-winning producer of HR and compliance training. Welcome, John and Bob.
Thanks for
Hello.
having us.
Yeah, great to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. I love when I get to have two people on at once. It's some of my favorite conversations. So being mindful of everything that we want to talk about today, I want to jump in and ask the question I always start with. And whoever would like to go first to answer can go first. The question is that the name of the podcast is Leading Through Crisis. When you hear that phrase, what comes up for you, or what does that mean to you?
Well, I'll go first, Bob. For me, it's about guiding organizations and individuals through tough times, right? And so it's not just, we think holistically in the workplace, we think of organization, top down. But in reality, it's any level within the organization, personal problems, vendor problems, leadership problems. The idea is to get folks through those tough, challenging times as fast or as slow as need be, and using the tools that are available or even finding new tools. That's what it means to me, is really getting through that crisis, helping the entire holistic approach to leadership and to helping others.
Yeah, my first thought was managers, leaders, they are the agents inside of the organization. And my first thought is, are they even equipped, or do they have the ability to lead through crisis? And in most cases, they don't. And you have to kind of see where we're at in time as far as a culture in our workforce. You go back 20 years ago, the managers, the leaders were baby boomers, such as myself, with a style of hierarchy leading. Well, now as we've progressed to where we are, many millennials are now in those positions. And the baby boomers are pretty much have exited out with some Gen Xers, and they have their own style. But the majority now is going to be the millennials. They have a different style of leading. And they were brought up underneath a different style that they don't really relate to. So are they even equipped, even though they have a different style? And the answer is no, most are not equipped. But once you give them the understanding of their position, what they can do, and how they can impact the organization at all levels, that's how you can make a really tremendous difference. Early in our conversation, that's what John and our passion, extreme passion, is to provide something for the individual inside of that organization that's going to impact them, because they're going to have new knowledge and they're going to be able to apply it immediately. And when that happens, you have change, great change.
Yeah. I love the distinction of, so first off, both of you have such a holistic view, and I know you use that language, John. I'm going to repeat it, but it really is very clear in just your responses how important that is. And also I love the focus on change, training, whatever it is that is immediately applicable and can instill change. Because I think a lot of times whether we've worked in organizations, whether we have witnessed this happening, so there is a lot of training, coaching, mentoring, whatever, where it's so theoretical that it's not actually applicable, where it's not,
Yeah.
can I use this right now? Can I make a difference with this?
Mm-hmm. Every
And
day.
right. So, I'm really curious what's the difference that you see besides in how you're delivering this or what you're seeing, or the different generations, boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, they all learn really differently. They all acquire skills differently. How they're going to apply them is really different. How do you address all of that? Because they are so different.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump in first, John, because I know you got a lot to talk about how people learn, which John is really good at. What we do is when we see a problem in the workforce, there's many times that we will partner with practitioners. They're subject matter experts. So they're in the trenches. They know what's actually happening. They're not going to be conceptual and theoretical ideas of this is what you should be doing. They really know, how do you make that change? What does this person, what are the competent skills they need? So that's what John and I do, is when we see that there's a need, and when it's appropriate, we partner with that subject matter expert, practitioner, and then we develop the training content that's going to be delivered in such a way it engages the learner. Because one of the key things is, if you're not relevant, that you're dismissed. And whatever you present to them, if it's not realistic, considering all the different generations we have, they're not going to believe it, and therefore you wasted your time. And if they can't relate to it, it won't make a difference either way. So that's what we do, is we try to be relevant, realistic, and relatable. And when you can do that, you engage the learner. So it's past concepts, theoretic, you've engaged them. Now you're able to deliver information. And when that happens, you're truly communicating. They take the message and they can go and apply it. So John and I have this formula, E plus I equals C. Emotion plus information equals communication.
Spot on.
Go ahead.
And to kind of put it into kind of scientific terms, we utilize a learner forward approach, or a model, right? So it's focused on the adult learner. And an adult learner in our world is somebody that's in the workplace, could be 14 years old, could be 82 years old. But what we look at is we look at utilizing multiple modalities, right? So it might be a game. It might be a short video situation or scenario. It might be a case study. It might be a discussion or a huddle card. We look at all the modalities that adult learners gravitate towards and can utilize to get that information to them, so that we have that, E plus I equals C. We also look at the dramatic edutainment. That's what Bob was talking about with the videos that we use. We don't use narrators just talking at somebody. Adult learners don't want that. They want to put themselves into a dramatic role or situation. And what I mean by that is, mentally, they connect with one or two or three of the characters within one of the video situations that we create. And then we use user-defined content. And what that means is, the users and the learners are driving the content and how they want to learn, when they want to learn, and topically what they want to learn. Those are really important. And that's all that together forms the basis of being able to make that change happen, right? We do it at their level, at their time, at their need. And that's really, really important for learners. And that's how situations change, right? Going from bad to good is because the learning and the connections and the communications and the conflict resolution are all being utilized or changed because of the learning moments that are created.
So I'm curious, with the different generations that are in the workplace that and I'm going to caveat this with my own bias. I think a lot of my experience has been in the work that I've done, that a lot of the perspectives we have on other generations are not really generational differences. They're time of life differences. So we are judging people for different times of life, not necessarily broad generalized generation. And I recognize those exist, but sometimes we miss the nuance between them, in my experience. I'm going to caveat my bias in this as I ask this question, which is, how are the different generations that are in the workplace together, whether it's boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever, I don't even know what they are at this point, the names of them, but how are they they communicate differently for sure, because they were raised with different communication tools, but how is that affecting the communication, but also how they're learning, because I imagine they gravitate towards different elements of learning, different elements of what effective communication is from their perspective.
We have a scene that we created, exactly what you're talking about. He's like a Gen X baby boomer character, and the other one is the millennial. So there's this time gap. Now, they're both in the same department, both trying to accomplish a project that's in coding and programming and reporting. Well, the older generation has learned how to do the job this way. Well, now comes the younger generation that has technology under their belt to advance it, to make it more efficient. And you see the conflict happening because one's coming from this approach, the other one's coming from here. And then in the scene, we see it kind of building up. There's conflict because they're misunderstanding each other. And then we do these little confessionals. So we hear what the older generation is thinking. And he goes through a laundry list. And then he says, and he's got a lot to learn. Then he goes to the younger person and he goes through his list. And at the very end, he says about the other person, and he's got a lot to learn. So the two end up discovering that they both have wonderful ideas. There's lots of experience that can help with the project, and there's lots of new ways that can help with the project. And so once they go through the model that's been developed to help them talk and communicate, they begin to really appreciate each other. I mean, just moments ago, they're like ready to go at it. Yeah. And then they actually become really good coworkers. There's answers to all of those differences. We have to just simply understand we're going to come from a different approach, different perspectives. And the more open-minded, the more we're curious to ask questions about the other, that's when all the wonderful good things can start coming out. And then the conflict is resolved in a positive way. And it's everlasting with that relationship. Because when they work through those things, the conflict, and it turns out positive, it's an amazing thing as humans that when we go through a conflict and we resolve it, we actually become closer and we have more trust for each other. And that just really spells out a strong, healthy relationship in the workplace.
Well, and it's important what Bob just said. Conflict isn't bad, right? Tension isn't bad.
Amen.
It's when you don't resolve it. That's when it becomes an issue, a workplace issue, a personal issue, things like that. But out of conflict, out of tension, oftentimes comes innovation. And that's a lot of the things that we talk about in our programs is that, hey, we're different people. We might be different generationally. We might be different from an education standpoint. We might be a different race. We might be a different religion. But we can resolve key issues when we take a moment, sometimes to step back and work on communication skills and get through or work through the conflict so that on the other side, we're all better for it. And that's really an important component. You're never going to get rid of conflict. Crises are going to happen regardless of the best intended practices within an organization. It's how you respond to those and how you build on communication skills and how you work through tensions to get to the other side and get to the innovations. And that's what that was a lot of what Bob was saying. That tension wasn't necessarily bad. It could have been bad, but by working through it, coming out on the other side, in this particular program, these two coworkers became friends, right? And they worked together to solve a lot of heady issues that were impacting the organization.
I cannot tell you how much I agree with repositioning the idea that all conflict is bad. And I talk a lot about healthy tension and healthy conflict, that we actually need conflict to grow. We need tension. People really don't like the word conflict, but we need tension to grow, whether it's individually, as a team, as an organization, because that in the difference is where the innovation is. It's where the possibility of change is. It's all of those things. But we are so avoidant of it in general. And I think age, we get less avoidant as we get older, oftentimes, because we're like, doesn't serve us to keep avoiding these things. And I'm sure generational communication styles affect this as well, but that we are so naturally as a society in North America avoidant of conflict that it's really hard to see any tension as healthy, even though it is and it should be addressed and stepped into, not stepped out of.
That's a really great point that you're bringing up, Celine. And when you look at organizations and you've got all these people, different generations and personalities, because you got two personality types that are going to be very direct in dealing with conflict. And you're going to have two other types of personalities that want to avoid it at all costs. And now what happened is the ones that are direct about it, they're avoiding it because they're afraid of how they're going to be seen and perceived. And then the other two personalities, they're still stuck because they don't want to deal with it. Mm-hmm. But when an organization can build a culture where it's encouraged that, you know what, hey, conflict is going to rise. There's no way we're all going to see things the same way. But if it's encouraged that you can work through it and you equip them, that's the key thing. If you equip them how to deal with conflict in a positive way, then it becomes the standard. Hey, okay, all right, Celine, you and I are disagreeing on something. Help me understand what it is about my ideas that you think are going to hinder us. And then you'll do the same thing, because that'll be how it goes. That becomes the status quo.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's something else that's really happening in the workplace right now, and it's partially generational, but it's a concept called FOBO. I don't know if you've heard of it, the fear of becoming obsolete. Okay. This is typically hitting a little bit towards the older generations because they're really concerned, not just of technology, because they're getting used to it, but it's AI and things like that. The things that are out of their control, but they hear in the news, it's coming, it's taking over my job. This happens across the board, not only in boomers and Xers, but even millennials now are saying, wait a minute, there's something out there that can do what I'm doing. Oh, great. What am I going to do?
Better, faster, cheaper.
Yep. FOBO is something that's really intriguing us as an organization that helps individuals and corporations get better at what they're doing through empowering their work. And it's one thing we're always asked about it. We utilize AI in all kinds of different ways. It's optimized some of the menial tasks that our systems were doing, that our people were doing, and things like that. But to put your head in the sand and say, oh, this is going to go away, this is just a fad, it's the last thing that anybody should be doing, right? And so what we tell a lot of folks that email us or call us or on different calls that we're on is AI is not going away, right? AI is getting smarter, better, and faster every single second. I used to say week or day, but it's every single second. What we need to do now as employees is understand it, right? We don't need to be afraid of it, but we have to understand it, know the limitations, and know how we can utilize it in our daily tasks or our job description, how we can utilize it, go to our manager and say, hey, I think, you've been hearing a lot about this. We can use AI or generative AI to help us with this, And so it's really important to understand some of these things that are happening from a technology standpoint, from a personal or personnel standpoint, and not be afraid, but to be inquisitive and start that process. Because those that aren't are going to be the ones that are going to find themselves without a job, right?
Yeah. And there's another, I'll add just a little bit more,
Please.
flip the coin over in regards to AI, the fear of being obsolete. Well, how do you resolve not being obsolete? Well, you need to be relevant. If you can stay relevant as far as at the human level, the skills that humans can do, that AI can't do. AI can't be creative. It can't make ethical decisions, because all AI can do at this point is mimic human behavior, but it can't be human at many different levels. It can't deal with an employee that keeps showing up 15 minutes late for work. It doesn't know how to do that. You do. So if it was me and I'm wherever I'm at in an organization and I see AI coming in, as John said, seek to understand it, be able to utilize it. But I would be begging, I would say, I want more training. in communication skills, managing skills, everything I can do to keep me relevant in today's workforce. And many organizations offer lots of training. And if they don't, I would be knocking on the door saying, I'd like to advance in these types of skills.
Well, and it's interesting when you say that. The thing that pops into mind immediately is there are a lot of people in organizations. I mean, caveat, there's a lot of people in the world, whether they're in an organization or not, who really they hoard knowledge. So the thing that they own at work, the thing that they do at work, they hoard that. That's theirs. They're not going to give it up. They're not going to share it. They're not training anyone else to do it. After I often think of it as like a kind of old school approach to the knowledge skill is moving so slowly that I can own this, and then no one is ever going to fire me because this is mine, right? I'm wrapping my arms around it. You can't see that. And that mindset still exists, even though everything has changed around it. And we still see people who are like, mine. I'm not going to, I am relevant forever with this. And I'm curious I assume they are definitely feeling FOBO more because of that mindset, but how do you address those people who are feeling the FOBO, but also really doubling down on, I am not going to give up the things that are mine?
You're really talking about self-preservation.
Yeah.
That's really what they're trying to do. And that actually is the problem because it's going to be a negative impact. You're not going to get what you want. You're focusing on what you don't want. And because you don't want to be obsolete. So therefore you start doing a self-preservation versus when you see, especially let's take managers, how, if they hold on to that information, how are those that report to them, how are they going to feel about their manager who's holding back? They know it. The relationship, there's no trust. It breaks down. Not good. Versus another manager that has all this knowledge and shares it because this manager understands that the more I build up those to the abilities that they have, the greater the organization is going to thrive, the greater you will thrive because you will feel so much better about yourself helping others. And so if they can see examples of how to be a positive manager in very difficult, fast changing times, reinforce positivity with everyone, and you'll break away from that self-preservation and you'll see there's a greater way to do things.
Well, yeah, and I think what Bob's saying is that about the managers who help their team, they're offering a level of psychological safety, right? Some comfort that they'll be able to come to this manager and say, listen, I'm nervous about this thing called AI. Is it going to take my job? What can I do to make myself better, right? How can I do things to help the organization and also help myself? There's no shame in wanting to help yourself, especially as you're communicating with a coach or a mentor, a manager, or what have you. Those are the kind of people that I want to come to me and say, hey, listen, this is what I hear. I'm hearing this out, in the news. What can I do to make sure that this team is going to keep going, that I can provide everything that the organization needs, and I can be a help, not a hindrance, because it's those who are going to be the hindrances are going to be the first ones that are gone. I hate to say it that way, but if you're not moving in a direction the organization needs to move, then you're going to find yourself looking for another organization to work for. And that's just the reality of what happened generationally when Ford set up the assembly line, right? Everybody thought, oh my gosh, this is going to take away so many jobs because they can do it faster. They use less people. Well, you know what? They need more people creating more parts so that the faster production can take place. Same with robotics. All of a sudden you create mechanical engineers that are working on these robots that go down all the time because they're constantly working repetitive jobs. So mechanical engineers came into a huge boom in the 90s and 80s, 90s, and even now. So there's that fear or that hindrance that you're putting up or blocking is actually probably hurting you more than AI coming in and doing your job a little bit faster or smarter, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and it's really interesting, Celine, you bring that up about the self-preservation person. As John was talking about, they won't practice psychological safety. And when they're in that mode of self-preservation, they're going to be critical. They're going to blame others because they're trying to be nothing. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm doing my job. And we had this one situation where that organization has been created, and this person was supposed to get an order out, and they accidentally deleted the email and then caught it later and got the shipment out. But the customer was upset. And so the manager comes to find out and says, what happened to this order? And the young person is going, well, the shipment went out. They got their product, right? And she's trying to probe. And then she finally provides that psychological safety for him to finally confess and say, I accidentally deleted the email and I didn't catch it until Monday. And she was like, that's okay, because we all make mistakes. And he was, oh, wow. All of that heavy burden was just lifted. So it turns out back to conflict, back to, tension. And it turns out into a wonderful, positive thing.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for organizations that can create cultures where tension is healthy and is allowed and is the norm. And also, everyone makes mistakes. You're not going to be punished, fired, whatever. Obviously, there are exceptions where certain things are unacceptable mistakes, right? We're not, there are extremes where it's not a mistake. If you're sexually harassing someone, maybe you don't work that work, right? There's extremes. So I'm going to acknowledge that in what I'm saying. But everyday mistakes, those things that happen in the course of being a human, they're discussed and learned from. They're not immediately punished, and you're not shamed for it.
Right.
That's an amazing thing that, it's okay to make mistakes. Because you think about it, every person that got up this morning didn't get up and go, gee, I want to make about at least 10 to 12 mistakes today.
Yep.
No, they wake up and everybody goes, I want to do the best I can.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
But
and also,
happen.
well, yeah, I mean, you got to think about it also. That level of forgiveness of those mistakes saves the organization tons of money, because guess what? It takes thousands and thousands. I think the last stat was $27,000 to replace an employee. So it's better, it's more efficient, it's cost savings to actually work through a mistake than to say, oh, you're gone. Now, granted, Celine, there's some things that are not permissible,
Yes.
but every day, 99.9% of issues that happen in the workplace can be resolved, and resolved correctly, and resolved to a win-win.
Yep.
And that's important to remember.
Yep.
And we learn the best through our mistakes.
Yep.
Isn't that always the thing? We celebrate and we talk about wins all the time, when really we should also be celebrating and talking about the mistakes, because that's where all the lessons. We don't get to the wins without all those mistakes.
Yep.
Before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't get to that you want to make sure to mention, and or something that you want to emphasize at the end of this, and or it's also okay to just say, I'm good and complete and I don't need to say anything else?
You've got the wrong two people in your podcast. The one thing I want to
You're
say,
like, there's so many things we need to get to.
one of the things that I really want to make sure that comes out is that, we've talked about some heady things, right? But you need to get to solutions. And we talked about the learner forward approach and things like that. Another key trend that we've seen we're probably ahead of it maybe 10 years ago, and that is how folks want to learn now. It's changed a lot, right? So learning used to be, hey, let's sit in a classroom. Let's discuss for 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours a topic. And that's just not relevant anymore. People, especially the YouTube and the Instagram generation, and that includes all of us, right? Because we all are on Facebook. We're all used to have Vines. We all, all the social media. It's, hey, I need something in a minute or two or less. And so it's really important for organizations to know and understand that microlearning is key to getting people engaged, keeping them focused, and teaching them a learning moment. Okay. And so for me, that's really an important part of what I do when I talk to learners, and I talk to tons of learners throughout the year to understand how they're learning, because that's how we grow as an organization. If we understand our space and our people and our customers, and not just the people who are buying, but the people who are actually utilizing the training. And so I had a really, really good meeting with the president of a university a couple weeks back, and we talked about being work ready. All right.
Mm.
So the graduates coming through, and this person was really concerned about the students getting into the workforce and not having the soft skills to keep a job. In fact, Forbes magazine last month published an article that said 80% of managers feel like firing the millennials that are coming, or the Gen Z folks that are coming into the workforce right now, because they don't have common skills. They don't have the soft skills, the communication, because a lot of times they're slapped here in the face to their phone. And one of the things I talked about with the president was, hey, we need to come to them, right? We need to come to their learning level and give them nuggets of information that are going to help and equip them to be work ready. And so we're rolling out a program with them as a pilot for all their graduates to go through 7 to 8 courses on things like time management, emotional intelligence, but at a level that it's really fun, easy, and quick. So these are all 5 to 7 minute quick hit modules on key and important. Conflict resolution was another one, right? Just simple ways to build up some quick skills so that when they get into the job, they at least are equipped to be able to handle some of the first day stuff, is what I call it. And so that's something that I wanted to make sure that we kind of just hit at a high level. This could be a whole nother session, right? A whole nother podcast talking about microlearning and the ways that we need to come to the level of the learner. And so that's really important to know and understand as an organization, that you need to meet your people where they feel comfortable.
Yeah, I'll finish my last comment. For those that are listening to this and you're an employee of some sort of organization, you're part of something, ask yourself, do you want to be a weak employee or do you want to be a strong employee? A weak employee is going to stay in the status quo. They're going to just try to survive. They're going to self-preserve. A strong employee is going to grow. And how do you grow? Knowledge. Knowledge is power. That's how you become a strong employee, because you will develop skills. They're going to be valuable and relevant.
Yeah.
I would encourage learn and make mistakes along the way, which is actually a good thing.
We love mistakes. So thank you, Bob and John, for being guests today. This is a super interesting conversation. I appreciate your humor and all of your wisdom that you shared with us. For anyone who is listening or watching, all the links will be in the show notes, and you can find out more about Bob and John's organization, Sollah, at sollah.com, sollah.com. And is there a way that they can connect with you if they're interested in connecting with either of you?
You can hit me up on social. We're on all the social platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I just type in Sollah and you'll find us.
Perfect.
That box. Yeah.
Thank you both for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, you've been a great host, Celine. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Leading Through Crisis, hosted by Celine Williams and brought to you by Revisionary. To learn more, visit leadingthroughcrisis.ca. Connect with Celine on LinkedIn and explore the show notes for resources and next steps. Until next time, keep leading with courage and clarity.